the ball rolling. This is David Weed, Chairman of the Morris Planning and Zoning Commission. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting. It's like a regular workshop meeting, though the state doesn't say there's any such thing as a workshop meeting, but historically, these meetings were set aside to do more planning and regulation related work. And so it's very appropriate that we have Janelle Mullen here today. We're going to eventually dig into the agritourism regulation. However, I'd like to, before we get there, recognize that it's basically 7:04 p.m. on Monday, May 10th, 2021. And the board members present are Kim Dorr, Veronica Florio, Doug Barnes, and participating via Zoom, Bill Ailes. He's our foreign correspondent for the day. And we have a special guest, as I said before, Janelle Mullen, which we'll get to in a couple of minutes. We do have some business to take care of first. And number 2 is agenda review. You said there's something we need to talk about here.
Yeah, 150 Stoddard Road.
So if somebody could make a motion to add 150 Stoddard Road. What's the details on Stoddard Road for that, the agenda item?
I think, well, there's technically 200 registered cars. The big problem is that someone lives there who does not own the property and someone's trying to buy it, but they have to buy it with the person who lives inside it.
So it should go
I think I
in
saw that on the.
5, should be 5B that we're adding to the agenda, and it's a complaint about.
I'll make a motion to add 150 Stoddard Road as 5B to the agenda for May 10th.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions, motion carried unanimously. Okay, 3, I assume it's meant to be letter A. Application special exception under section 52 for a solar array at the transfer station. Section 53. Is that right?
I think so.
Is it 50? Special exception is 52.
There's 52. The thing is, there's 52 and 53.
Oh, there is 53. That's where all the uses of it. Okay.
Yeah, so
That's the new regulations that I'm still not completely up to speed on. No problem. My mistake. For a solar array at the transfer station. So we have paperwork that we received, and just for everybody who is in the audience, a little bit of background on this and for the board. The town and a company, was it
our energy.
RN Energy are looking to put in solar panels on the property on the transfer station. There is a field to the east of where you dump all your garbage, and that's where they would end up. And we went through and did a zone change to allow the town to have a solar array on a town property of, as long as it passes through a special exception approval that would generate power for outside and off property. And hence they now have come through with a special exception application. And we are now going to consider it. Now, I take it that, is this what's the paperwork we have on it?
It's here, I think.
Is it this application for a permit here?
That's the application.
Okay. We have a statement of use.
There's a site plan too. Yep.
Got a site plan.
Yes, there's a site plan. I thought I saw that next to it. Yes, oh, cool. So we have everything that we need.
And the statement of use.
Do we have real maps?
No, not yet. He will send them when he said when we're ready, he'll send them.
Well, we're going to schedule the public hearing, so we need them for the public.
Yeah, no, he said whenever we schedule it, he'll send them right over.
Cool. And so did anybody print this out before they got here?
I didn't see.
Veronica or Doug?
No, I didn't have a
This is the
chance.
same thing we've looked at.
I looked at it online though.
Okay. Anybody who wants to see it, like here's the statement of use. This is the application. So
I haven't.
you're closest.
So.
Sorry, I'm being crazy too. And what we should always do when we do this is we should open up our, sorry about the noise. Try to be very quiet. I should bring my laptop next time, I think, is the answer to all this. See if I can at least move this. Put it over here. And so section 55, 54. 53 is the procedures for site plans and special exceptions. So actually, what we do want to look at is procedure. Has he provided notice? So he knows he's going to need to send notice.
Yep, to the butters, yep.
And so basically, because it's a special exception, we're going to hold a public hearing. And what we're going to need to do is receive the application. So that would, we can discuss it, but we really should make a motion first to receive the application. Unless those of you who've looked at it feel there's something deficient or missing, because it's like,
I'll make a motion to receive the application for the solar array at the transfer station.
do I have a second?
State your name.
Douglas Barnes, second.
And Veronica made the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, Veronica Correa.
And this is David Weed, chairman again, I'm sorry. And Kim is the person who is looking at the, Kim Dorr is speaking earlier when we were sharing copy of the plan. So the point is that we're going to need 4 copies of the site plan. I guess there will really be no, is he going to provide any kind of architectural plan?
I'm not sure, but I can ask. I'll make sure he does.
Because there could, at least have an idea what a solar array would look like. And so everything else is really, would be for our review during the application period. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a question on the access. He has to, I'm assuming they have to get approval from the state to access off of the state road.
That would be true.
So they have to go through
Well, I
that
think,
with the state.
but I think if you look at the map right now, there are 2 access ways to find
Well,
them.
they have access through the town landfill,
Yes,
but they also have it listed as blowing another driveway through off the state
Right.
road, and that has to be,
and that's one thing that they're going
to
to.
apply to the state for that.
Right. And get approval for that. And the the thing will be that I don't think they've made a final, I think they want to access through the town landfill transfer station. However, they still have the Route 109 access because, to make sure that we're comfortable, because he was asking about what he should do, and I suggested he show both so that we know what each one would look like. And we can, I think they'll make a final decision and present final plans based on what
right?
But I think,
I think he left it up to us where it was gonna go, didn't he?
and that's, we want to direct him on that during the public hearing, that's fine too. As it be.
I mean, my concern would be going through the town landfill with the amount of solar panels, et cetera. That's going to be quite the disruption.
I was curious how that,
I don't think, the impression I got was that from talking to them, we can follow up on this, with them, is that they hardly ever go out there.
No,
yeah,
but
but.
the initial,
Setup,
The initial construction.
yeah, that's
so it would go through the
quite a bit
back,
of panels that looks like on that little map there.
but they wouldn't have to go up the hill, they just go behind the demolition bins and the metal bin and like that.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be up where the people are dumping off their garbage, right?
Dave, isn't this the discussion we should be having during the public hearing technically?
Yeah, well, we're just making sure that the application is complete.
Yeah.
Before,
Let's make sure it's complete.
and what we need to ask of him when we get into a public hearing. It's not unusual that we'll have a discussion of what's here, because normally we'd have the applicant here. Is Noel dialed in?
Don't think so. Don't look like it. I don't think so.
He usually calls in. Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. Anything else? Then I will call the question. All those in favor of receiving the application? Did we say receive or did we?
We said receive.
Yeah, good. Somehow I had accept on the brains for some reason. All those in favor of receiving the application, please say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. And that is 3A. 4A. There's no real update on 199 West Morris Road, is there? Or not?
Nothing. Are
We
we-
have to schedule a public hearing before we move on, or?
Oh, wait, well, we didn't set a date in the motion.
Oh, no, we received it. but We didn't set a date for a public hearing.
You should do it, normally we do it as part of the motion,
Oh, all right.
and I wasn't thinking, sorry.
That's okay.
Got you.
So what's a good date? What is,
Our next meetings are June 2nd and June 14th.
Let's do June 2nd. Make a motion to set the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to set a public hearing on the application for the solar array at the transfer station for June 2nd, 7 PM,
2021, I take it. correct.
2021.
And any second to that, please?
I will second it. Kim Dorr.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Thank you for catching me.
Oh, sorry, I didn't include it in the
I
beginning.
know, but you caught yourself and you caught me too. I appreciate that. Okay, that means we're also not going to do anything on 4A because we're waiting on the work he's doing. It's really on a placeholder, so we don't forget about it and we make sure the job gets done.
what is it supposed to, can you remind me what's going on? with
This is
that?
the cottages.
This is the cottages that just appeared without a zoning permit?
Yes, and we discovered
And
like a
What
year
is
or so
what
later.
is he ostensibly doing at this point?
He's going to make the applications to get the proper building permits in place and proper, any zoning stuff he needs. I don't think he really needs anything from us other than get the proper regulations and make sure it's on the land record. Good, but still something Tony probably should take a look at just to make sure what's in these things.
Yep.
So we don't have any hidden surprises.
Okay.
That's all. We should know what's going on. Especially when they haven't done the proper due diligence up front. It's,
Right. It seems like it's,
It behooves us to
I
do
would
that.
have hoped that they would have at least come back with something by this point.
supposedly it's in process, right?
Yes. That's what the landowner said.
Well, let's keep track of how long it is so that if it gets much past 60 days, I mean, we won't, I mean, I would hope there's some progress by June. If so, in June, we might want to write them saying what schedule kind of thing, but I don't think it's too soon to do that right now. If the board feels differently, please make a motion accordingly.
Well, how long has it been?
Tony,
Kind of discussed this about a month ago. It's been a little while, but about a
I
month.
mean,
well, I think you announced last Wednesday that,
I spoke to him, yeah.
yeah, and that's what the plan was.
all right,
Yeah, if
So-
he doesn't have something by our next meeting, then,
but fair enough, yeah.
At least show some signs of progress.
yeah, something.
Yeah, it's fine.
Cool. And now what we're all here for, 4B, agritourism amendment to the regulations. I'd like to, before I turn it over to Janelle, I'd just like to make a statement as to what this is and what this is all about. We do want to consider agritourism. It's something that the state in general is looking into. Yes, we seem to be a groundbreaker on this in the area, but I think there are a few other towns that have worked on it too. And I know everybody looks at this and looks at the person who presented it to us as an idea. And some of the language in the original proposed application, which included music and concerts and festivals and like that, which may or may not be appropriate. I'm not going to comment on that, or I think that's something for the board as a whole to decide.
Mhm.
And that would be based on what we work out with our planner, who's doesn't necessarily have, doesn't, you know, who's our independent authority and our consultant. And, you know, and I know because of where the idea came from, there's a lot of concern about the events. And I did get a bunch of emails late in the weekend and today, which I've really not had a chance to properly go through and do justice to. I kind of hope that if, you know, if people wanted to have something in before this meeting, that they would have done it like Friday or Saturday, not Sunday, Monday. However, the real important part is whatever we decide to do on this, it would be a change to the zoning regulations, an amendment to the zoning regulations, which would require us to provide a public hearing and notice as to what the changes are. And of course, I haven't really read detail through Janelle's stuff here, but most likely what the original proposal was, which made perfect sense, is that any agritourism thing would be a special exception application, which would require a public hearing. So that even if we pass a agritourism regulation, most likely the agritourism regulation will require a second public hearing for the specific implementation of that use. Because this isn't necessarily a regulation for South Farms. This is a regulation for the town of Morris. And therefore, you know, anybody who has a property that's large enough to be considered a farm and wants to operate a farm would need to use this regulation. So there's well more than one property that we'd be talking about for this. So we need to take a global perspective. It's not just think of it about one individual, because it's not one individual that this is all about. And that's not where the board is coming from on this, no matter what the initial intent was. Yeah, I can speak, Doug.
Okay. So I think this is a good start. Thank you, Janelle.
I'd like to give a chance to present it too.
Okay, but I thought people had read it at this point, but I just, you know, if we're gonna, she can go ahead and present it and then I'll do my comments. I'm happy to.
No, it's okay.
Defer on that. No, I think that I'm assuming we haven't heard back from Bernd on the things that we talked about last time.
No, not yet.
Because I think sort of my overarching concern before we even sort of advance this regulation and take it to a public hearing is I'd like to sort of see it done in conjunction with sort of generally beefing up our ability to sort of impose conditions on special exceptions, and also to be able to get a better understanding of what it looks like if someone does not comply with
Or
conditions.
enforcement options.
Yeah, and so I think that it's very hard to sort of pull these things apart, because I read this and this is, oh, this is great, but it would be, there'd be conditions, and, there would be limits, and there would be monitoring. And my concern is that I'm not sure that we have like a legal basis for being able to do that. And we need to make sure that in connection, if we were to move forward with something like this, that it be done in connection with addressing those other issues.
Right.
So,
I agree.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I
No, I,
like the questions you guys came up with last week for
yeah,
Steve.
so,
Because we definitely need an enforcement mechanism that's better than $150 a day fine.
yeah, and,
Limit.
yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
thank you,
right.
Doug, for your comments.
Okay, so I'm sorry to say, sort of short stop.
But I mean, in the meantime, we can delve into it and get ready to.
Yeah, no,
to
we
do
should
it.
absolutely be talking about it. I just don't think it's time. I'm going to be reluctant to vote to move this sort of to the next step until we sort of have all the pieces sort of in the same state.
And then, and Janelle, might have some ideas or might,
Great, yeah, no, I appreciate
I mean,
it.
I don't know what she has on that, but, that's why we have her here. She may, if she doesn't have the answer, she's got access to people who might have the answer
Awesome.
or have suggestions and ideas. And that's why you have,
Concerts out there right now.
so, what's that, Veronica? I'm sorry.
I'm trying to read it from here because I didn't have a chance to, and
Oh.
I just saw the agritourism. Oh, I'm sorry, Janelle didn't even get a chance to present it yet.
No,
but-
it's okay. It's okay. I appreciate,
No,
I
don't have-
appreciate the discussion.
Don't have concerts. It's all agritourism. It's
There's,
secondary
the word
use.
concert does appear in here.
Yeah, and I don't think it should right now.
Okay.
And that's, but I'd like to do this and let Janelle take the lead.
After the
Have
seminar,
her field the
Okay.
questions and the feedback. Even though I'm chairman, I think that, that she's our consultant and we're paying her to do this stuff. And, I expect that she be able to take the lead and present what she has and ferret out some of that stuff. So please, Veronica, your comments are worthy and will get consideration. And, because to me, this agritourism isn't necessarily for concerts, but, it's
No,
something
yeah,
we have to
just-
take in consideration given the current.
my takeaway from the seminar that we went to was it really should be secondary use to agriculture is agritourism.
So why don't I jump in and just
Please.
briefly go over this document that was presented, and then we can get into the discussion, because I really value this discussion. I think all the points that are being brought up are really important. So without further ado, just in looking at this document, I hope everyone had a chance to at least glance at it, hopefully read it. I do recall, Veronica, I saw both you and Doug attended that webinar that Joan Nichols presented at, and I thought that was really valuable information. What she presented did inform some of this draft. So just in brief, getting into the purpose of agriculture, the big takeaway from that is truly there's an underlying agricultural use, but then there's also these other uses layered on top of that to ensure a viability of the farm operation. So that's just in brief the intent behind the regulation. And then we move into this definition section. I think it's a good opportunity to clean up agriculture. Currently now in the regulations, there's two different definitions. They conflict with one another and they're not quite all encompassing of what agriculture means. A suggestion is always to go with the statutory definition, which is referenced here, which is that 1-1Q, which is very much all encompassing anything that the state recognizes as falling under the farm definition, farming, agriculture, all considered the same by the state. It's a very lengthy definition. I've cut it short for the purposes of not falling onto a full page. Should it be adopted in the regulations, the full definition will be drawn here. And then getting into agritourism, the state statutes, they do not have a definition for agritourism. This definition was a culmination of different references. I do know the University of Vermont, they've done a lot around agritourism, and we can pick and choose the words in here. So I did hear the comment about concerts. That's definitely something to think about. But basically, activities that are a part of a farm's total offerings, but are not agriculture and accessory to agricultural uses. This definition is also a good opportunity for the commission to decide how to define accessory. There have been a few instances where a 51% threshold was thought about, and that would be 51% of the land would be utilized for agricultural uses. Again, that I leave with the commission to truly discuss and talk through how they want to define agricultural and what's accessory. I think it's really important that the commission talks about items that are within their jurisdiction. So for instance, land area rather than the total revenue that a particular business is bringing in. That's just not something that the Planning and Zoning Commission should look at per se, given the jurisdiction is land use. But that's definitely something that I want to discuss with the commission. What is our threshold for accessory to agriculture? How do we define that? How do we make that very, very implicit, very, very clear? And then we get into accessory uses for agriculture. Again, this is a great opportunity to discuss what's an agricultural use versus these accessory uses that bring a lot of visitors from elsewhere to the site. So that could impact the neighboring properties, keeping in mind that agriculture is allowed currently within residential districts and then a commercial district. So just thinking about adjacent properties and long-term impacts. Then we get into this concept of event, because I know that's worked its way into agritourism. So clearly defining what an event is. And then this next session talks about approval process, which I've worked into the regulations so that it's very, very clear, both to the commission, zoning enforcement officer, and to any applicant, what approval process is required for what action. So that's where there are particular uses by right, that overarching agricultural use that comes from the state. And then we get into things that are relatively common with agricultural uses, such as a roadside farm stand, other accessory uses. This is where we start to bring outside visitors to a particular site and would potentially want to go the special exception route, provided the potential neighboring impacts. I do want to get to what Doug commented on about special exceptions and conditioning them. As you move further in this document, I just want to make sure, great. Thank you to whoever's steering the document. So I get into a very clear application requirement. So a big part of making sure that the document is user-friendly, not only for the zoning enforcement officer, for the commission, but also for the applicant, is to really very clearly spell out what's needed with each application. So this gets into when a special permit is triggered, what's required. I think it's very helpful for staff and the commission to have this list so that if anything is missing upon receiving an application, that it's actually not technically received. So should a site plan be missing, a floor plan be missing, or a narrative be missing? And again, I get very detailed here so that descriptions aren't missed, hours aren't missed, traffic flow isn't missed, that variations of different site use activity is explicitly explained, and that we get into the operational details. And I think it's really, really important to let any applicant know to actually overdo it on the application side. So ask for more than you might actually have on your site. So should you want a corn maze and hay rides and an occasional farm field trip from a local school, put all of those items into an application so that the commission can act on it one time, potentially approve the catalog of uses rather than come back for a special exception after special exception after special exception. And then also in turn, so the commission can evaluate the property with all the uses under one application. So it's very clear what potential impacts might affect neighborhoods or might just be a part of the application. So that's sort of an educational piece for both the public and then for the commission. And then we get into modifications. Oftentimes regulations do jump over modifications, though in real life, you're out in the field and the economy changes and you wish to maybe alter what you once got approved. This makes it slightly easier for an applicant should they wish to one day realize all of a sudden, it's a big thing to do pick your own and they weren't focusing on that before, to then bring that into the foray of the farm activity and potentially go for an administrative review versus a commission review, and then also make sure that the zoning enforcement officer always has the opportunity to bring anything before the commission. So this just spells out those sorts of things because they do happen, especially in the field, especially with uses over time. And then this also gets into multiple uses. So again, back to my original suggestion of just making sure that when looking at an application, the commission keeps in mind any pre-existing uses that might already be a part of the farm, even if they are pre-existing non-conforming, but then also consider any new uses that might be a part of the property. So to look at the property as a comprehensive use and then think of that use just as a aggregate of everything that's happening, so that all of the potential impacts are kept in mind when the applicant is seeking a special permit approval. And then we get into these I did make a note about expiration. Sometimes, again, up to the commission, if it seems like there's a lot of agritourism activity, it might be helpful for there to be a trigger in the regulations that requires an applicant that has an agritourism special permit to come back every year before the commission and just present their events to the commission. So the commission basically has the calendar of anticipated events so that they can look at it on an annual basis. This provides an extra check and balance should the commission want to have that mechanism worked into play. I have seen towns do this, especially when it's something that might vary over time, and events, an event based. So for instance, a new farm might come into play and only propose, for example, 2 weddings a year, and then realize that they have capacity for more. So then the following year, if it's already built into the regulations that they have to come back and ask for it, they're probably more inclined to provide that information to the town. Then we get into special provisions. So very detailed provisions that would go with agricultural uses. This is just to ensure, again, that neighboring properties are not adversely impacted. This does get into this non-agricultural use concept, that 51% that was thrown out during the webinar by Joan Nichols, who's from the Connecticut Farm Bureau, who advocates for farmers and truly discussed where a threshold could be. I brought land use into play because land use is under the jurisdiction of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We get into sound. Sound is often a component of any non-residential activity in residential zones. So thinking through whether the commission wants to limit hours. We do have deep noise standards. They're very difficult to enforce. So it's helpful if there's another enforcement mechanism there for the zoning enforcement officer should they need, such as a very clear hour cutoff. It's very clear if it's 10 p.m., it's 10 p.m., the sound is done, versus these decibel readings that are improbable at best. And then we get into outdoor lighting. That just, a lot of these were generated from what tends to be considered a nuisance to a resident, especially an adjacent one. Gets into temporary structures. That's also something that the building inspector potentially would want to be aware of. So it's important to work that into this application, especially making sure that there's the definition of temporary in there. So oftentimes, just having had zoning enforcement experience, you will get a complaint, you'll talk to a property owner and you'll notice that this temporary structure actually seems to have a permanent characteristic. So this just ensures that, you know, tents don't go up and not get taken down, et cetera, should the commission wish to go that route. We get into parking just to make sure that it's set back and, you know, refuse, et cetera, anything that could be considered a nuisance to neighboring properties. Again, making sure that the site can serve the use that is being proposed. So this plays into the on-site sewer and sanitary systems. Any use that's being proposed on a lot, one would hope that all of the uses are supported by the infrastructure that are proposed on that lot. And then again, just throwing out there, this is sort of a given, but I put it in there that all fire code and building code is also applicable, just as a reminder. And then we get into activities complying with state, local, federal regulations, just a safe holder to have. And now we get into this special criteria. So this is extremely helpful for the commission. I do see very commonly in regulations, approval criteria doesn't get enumerated. So it's tricky when a commission gets a special permit and they're looking through it. It's very hard for the applicant to know what is being evaluated and also for fellow commissioners to know what is being evaluated. So this puts it on paper and just provides very clear bullet points. A lot of these are driven by statute, what the Planning and Zoning Commission actually has the jurisdiction of looking at when it's in evaluating a special permit application. I think it's really important to just put the role of the Planning and Zoning Commission onto paper so the applicant knows and expects what it is that the evaluation criteria is. And then also so the commission at any given time, whether there's new members, veteran members, older members, they all are consistently looking at the same criteria. So again, this is very much statutorily driven. The protection of public health, safety, welfare, property values, that's statutorily why these commissions exist. Proposed use needs to be compatible with the town's POCD, needs to be in harmony with the orderly development of the town, and then the use does not hinder or discourage neighboring uses. So that's very clear for the commission to use when they're evaluating a special permit. It's very clear for the applicant to satisfy those requirements. And then we get into the conditions of approval. This is very important because per statute, I'll have to reference the actual section of the statute for all of you, but any special exception that's being conditioned, the regulations have to spell out what the conditions possibly can be. So very, very often this happens, whereas a commission will condition a special permit and nowhere in the regulations does it state that they can condition a permit in this way. That's something to be very cautious about and mindful of. So this makes it very clear where conditions can be drawn, what they can involve. They need to be consistent, they need to be expected. A big role of the zoning regulations is that they provide property owners with reasonable expectations of their property use and property value. So that's where this all comes into play. So if it's not in this list, the commission in force can't use the condition. So if anything is important that gets left off of this list, it's important to put it on. It's not something that in the heat of the moment during a public hearing, a commission can add. So I think that's really, really important. I see this very, very often. Many towns do this all the time. They commission permits, but they don't actually have the authority in the regulations to do so. So just keeping in mind these details, we get into screening, hours of operation, requirements. And then as you scroll down, you'll see there's flexibility. So for example, this last bullet, any data, plans, drawings that the commission finds necessary, that's a catch-all, honestly. So should the commission feel that they need more information, they do have that condition that they can then put on an application to use for its approval. So that definitely helps with the flexibility there, but it's really important to make sure that anything that is potentially conditioned does get thrown out in the regulation. So that's just somewhat brief summary of what was written, but I'm really open to discussion, questions, feedback from the commission.
No, it's Veronica. I have a question. Under the state's agriculture regulation, I know it's really long. I did read it once. It's
Yeah.
extremely long.
Yeah.
Are there things that would be considered agritourism that could be considered a use of right as under that agricultural definition?
I have to relook at it. The one thing that I'm using in my mind's eye to trigger agritourism and what I got out of that webinar from Joan Nichols is the activity that's bringing visitors to the site. So the definition of agriculture doesn't get into that. It really talks about uses on that site that are just between, you know, the farmer and the land. Where
Okay.
I use agritourism, or where I feel that agritourism can be really clearly seen, clearly triggered, is where those agricultural uses are bringing visitors from the site.
Okay, so like you're a farmer and you can grow corn, but if you have a corn maze, that brings people to the property, that's an agritourism. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's the perfect example, to be honest, because the definition doesn't get into that activity of offsite visitors.
Okay.
And thanks for being there. I saw you there.
Oh, it was really good.
Yeah, Joan is great. I'll send these to Joan should
I mean,
we
she,
come up with a draft.
I mean, it's difficult. She even said it's difficult because most farms are in a residential zone.
Exactly.
Try to make
Exactly.
it work for everybody and yeah, so. No, it was a great seminar.
Mhm. Did I bore everyone to tears? You guys are all speechless.
No,
Any questions from anybody else on the board?
I think we ought to digest this one.
I know, I do.
To get back to us on those enforcement questions.
Did we share those with Janelle? I don't think.
No, please do. I was actually gonna ask that. I would really like to know what happened.
You will send.
This is Dave Wig. I did not share them with her. I didn't think to share that with her, and I will.
Yeah, we should
She knows
probably that, and also
Minutes are
the
uploaded.
examples. So at our last meeting, Janelle, we requested that we asked some questions of the town attorney regarding things relating to conditions and enforcement
Yeah,
relating to special exceptions. Because, I mean, my perspective, and other people may feel differently, but, my perspective is that I would like to try and see the town experiment with giving temporary permission to do different kinds of things. But then after, I would very much like to bake into it the ability for things to automatically expire after a year and have to come back for reapprovals.
mhm,
And because I think that, to your point that you made in your presentation, it's very hard to actually, capture, saying, oh, well, it's this many decibels at the boundary of the field, right? We don't have the ability to, or the staff to sort of be, holding up sound meters at 10:30 at night.
you don't want to do that.
But what we do have is we can sort of take the temperature of the community after a particular sort of thing has happened and say, okay, let's have a hearing. Let's see if this is something that we ever want to have happen again. And if it's going to happen again, are there any sort of changes that have to be made in order for it to be acceptable?
Yes, and the power that you do have as a commission, especially where special exceptions are, you have the ability to revoke one. So keeping in mind that a special exception is in essence, it's a use that's given special permission for. So it's a special privilege to have this use on a said property. So the commission has that power to grant that. They also have the power to take that away. So
I don't think we do though, Janelle. Last I knew it was $150 a day fine to violate it with a cap on that. And then there was, cease and desist and attorneys. And I mean, it's not just, I'm looking for something that you violate it, you're done automatically.
That, so that is, I mean, I have your regulations up on my desktop, so I'll look at that exact language, but that's also, I mean, that's statutory. So maybe in the future, it might be really helpful to reference some very clear statutes in the regulations that give you that authority, but that's definitely a power that the commissions have.
Yeah. So anyhow, we'll sort of forward those questions to you, but you know, the main concern is that there are some people on the board who believe that it is not possible to grant sort of annually renewing permits. And I noticed that your regulations do contemplate
Yeah.
required to come up for annual.
Yeah. So
And so
I-
that was.
yeah, so I have had experience with that. An example would be gravel blasting. So every year that applicant would have to come back because it was much like you said, it was sort of a pilot program at first. The town was a little leery about giving someone a special permit for dynamite and for blasting in a residential neighborhood. And then the applicant came back every year without a problem. And I've seen it for
Comparing it to what actually did happen here.
Don't laugh, we do have 3 gravel mines in town.
No. What I'm laughing about is that it's actually not that far from the kinds of concerns that we have about certain other activities.
yeah. No, I have seen expirations worked into special exceptions. It's very helpful that it's very specific. So it would be on January 1 of an even numbered year, on January 1 of every year, not on the cycle of the approval, because then that gets really crazy for the ZEO to have to track, oh, what date was this approved? Because then I need to put a trigger in my calendar a year from that. So if you just take all of your special exceptions, have them expire on the same day. So you just say, okay, January 1 of the following year. And then all the agritourism applications could come back at that exact time. It makes it a lot cleaner than if you have these different expiration dates that the poor zoning enforcement officer has to then track.
Have you seen instance, the other thing that we have a concern about is that if someone just sort of carries on, so suppose the special exception expires on January 1st, but they just sort of carry on doing whatever it is that they're doing, what sort of, you know, additional sort of enforcement teeth can we include in a regulation? Because as Veronica pointed out, right now, and it actually looking at a lot of these different town regulations, it seems like $150 a day is sort of the only, frankly, the only sort of thing that I have seen, even after looking at maybe a dozen and a half planning and zoning regulations. I was wondering if you've had any experience with towns sort of putting into the regulations or in a town ordinance the ability to have harsher penalties that are proportional sort of to, you know, either they're just a larger number or something that we were kicking around was something that's proportionate to the amount of money that they're making by violating the regulation.
Mhm.
Right? Does that make any sense?
No, it does. Sadly, you would want to have, because that would vary, you would want to have a very clear number. So again, consistency, always looking for that you're enforcing things in a consistent way and that there's an expectation there between the commission and then also property owners. So I would certainly make it very, very clear. So I'm glad that all of these questions are coming up because they're very, very important. The enforcement piece, there is a cap in statutes of how much a town can charge per day. I can quickly Google that and grab that for you. I do know that's statutory. And then if your town ordinance also caps it, so my understanding is right now the regulations cap that amount, you would have to amend the regulations should you wish to increase it, as long as it's in line with statutes. So that fine per day can definitely rack up. I've definitely seen, witnessed, and put fines of hundreds of thousands of dollars on property. And then if that doesn't seem like a strong enough stick to get a property owner to comply, cease and desist orders are, and then you can get the court involved. And I mean, I've seen in this area, most towns seem very forgiving and very kind and very amicable with their property owners, which is a wonderful thing. But there's certainly tools should anyone wish to enforce. If you're quickly racking up these fines, and then also if you have a lien on your property, that's always a potential. So that's all authorized in statute. It's just the manner in which the town wants to take use of that authority, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I have your regulations up right now. In the meantime, any other, what else was asked to Attorney Barnes, just so I know to do that research? Did I lose you? I lost you.
Can you hear us?
Yes,
Sorry, then I went out.
What you were saying back there.
yeah, at what point did we lose each other?
The beginning,
A while ago.
Kind of like this.
Minutes ago. 2 to 3 minutes ago.
quite a while ago.
Okay, so just for reference, right now, when you get into enforcement, if you're on page 97 of your regulations, that's what's in there right now. So there's definitely an opportunity to strengthen just the orders as far as what remedies you wish. Right now, in reading them really briefly, they don't even get into potential fines. So I'm assuming, and I do have to do the research, but I'm assuming that a town ordinance made that possible for the zoning enforcement officer to write fines. The statutes do cap the amount that those fines can be. And I have my legal book right in front of me, so I'll grab that really quickly. But did you get my drift on fining per day, the potential for a cease and desist, and then also the potential to get the courts involved?
Yes.
Yeah, and we're, part of our concern here is that the cost of enforcement could very well end up being more than what we would be recouping from the fines.
Right.
And that, some of the proposed activities are extremely lucrative. And that they could easily absorb $150 a day in fines and not bat an eyelash.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, ultimately the question, and then if we're looking at sort of like, possibly a year or two or more of litigation to get them to stop, which of course the town would be out of pocket for, there's a concern there. So some of the other ideas that sort of got kicked around is it possible to have people who receive special exceptions, can you have them, for instance, put down some sort of a deposit?
An escrow account, basically.
What's that?
An escrow account, basically.
Yeah. So that, if they stop complying or they violate a condition, that there's something to draw from for enforcement efforts.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, I've seen that only in the form of a bond for new construction. So the mechanism for, and that's, again, always tied to statute. So any of that authority that's granted to the commission to do anything that's financial, definitely, I would always look to the statute for that authority before going above and beyond what authority we're given by the state. So I see bonding for various elements of construction as a fiscal responsibility penalty there. When it comes to use, besides this punitive fine, I have not seen any other mechanism for doing such, because it's sort of an after effect, like a cause and effect. So you're in violation of the regulations, therefore you owe us this money. I don't see it being that proactive, pay us a deposit to ensure that you don't, that you don't comply with these regulations. The statutes aren't set up in that way, other than just the promise of construction happening should the town grant that approval. So it's tricky because we do have to work within the statutory framework. And I do have to say, yes, as a zoning enforcement officer, I have seen situations where there have been uses that are not authorized by the town that, again, I am enforcing every day. I'm writing citations every single day, and things take a long time and they go on longer than they need to. In writing these regulations and thinking through these regulations and where we can make them very, very clear, the special permit, again, revoking that use, if they're not authorized to have that use, I understand that they might prefer to pay that $150 and just keep going. But then the opportunity for that zoning enforcement officer, if there's a very blatant violation of the regulation and it doesn't look as though the property owner wants to remedy them, we do have to take it to court. And I know that's costly for towns. Sadly, that's sort of our exhausted list of remedies that we have as commissions and as zoning staff.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the board at this moment?
But I do have to say, as zoning enforcement officer, there's usually other means. So I would always have, like, if things got ever out of hand, there's usually police powers that can help you do your job. So should there ever be something that's above and beyond what's authorized in the town, it's definitely something that, should it come down to it, the police are also there. So it depends on what these concerns actually are.
Thank you, Janelle. And do I hear anything else from the board? Because I'm going to chime in because I have a couple comments and things I want to add. I think the board is going to want to tweak this in some way, adjust it, add to it, take from it. However, I guess what I'm looking for is functionality and how we would want to fold these into the regulations. Do we create a new section for this? I mean, if we're going to add special exception uses, we probably want to spell out a section in section 52 for the special exception uses. So to me, this is just a summary of what we can do. We would make this part of the regulations. We would have to make a number of modifications to the document we have over here. And I guess, what was your intent or your process that you would follow and folding these into the regulations?
Yeah, so just in looking at the main body, and I'm glad you asked this question because I would definitely defer to the commission. In looking at the full body of the regulations, it looks as though, I mean, it's hard because right now agricultural uses are inconsistent and they're mentioned in a
Right.
few different places. So it would certainly be a remove and replace type of situation where I would hope that the commission would want to remove any mention of agriculture that's currently in there, replace it with this definition, and then discern and determine where it makes the most sense for them to follow through. It definitely seems like there would be a place as far as uses go, to get into it there, or as you mentioned, to have a standalone section that touches upon agricultural uses. Right now, it's folded into residential uses and it's folded into the permitted uses within the districts that it's allowed. So the residential districts, and then it also gets into that commercial district. That's where it's currently mentioned. So that approach is how the commission sees their regulations evolving. That was sort of the bigger picture that I have for this commission. Is this a small piece of further amendments, or is this a critical amendment that might not have any other amendments to follow? It sounds like Doug was talking about maybe some amendments around enforcement. So that's definitely something I'd look at this comprehensively. If there's a commission petitioned application to make amendments to the regulations, I would certainly want to throw everything into the mix, get everything under one public hearing, just so that it can be comprehensively looked at. Oftentimes, regulations are updated in a very piecemeal fashion, and that can get messy, and that can result in some inconsistencies where you see during one term, a commission updated something and then it didn't get caught in a different term. So then there's conflicting terms and it leads to confusion.
Well, I guess I think there's several steps. I think number one, and that's something we can assign as a task right here and now, and that would be highlighting everywhere we mention agriculture in the current regulations. Who does the board want to do that?
I can do that.
You can do that. Thank you.
That's
not
a
bad.
quick, that's a quick control find.
I just didn't know whether the board had any ideas beyond that, and I think thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
in my, so it was a part of my first report, so I know it's on page 12, it's on page 16 where farm is mentioned, and then it's again on page 108. So it's pretty sparse actually, and then we get into permitted uses, so 108 is where it truly gets discussed as a use.
Okay. 12, 16, and 108.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you. So you've done that. That's cool.
yeah.
Because my thought on that is that, I mean, I can come up with several ideas of how it could be folded in. One, you could have a section much like we have for, the different technical zones in the town. Probably the best thing is to look at we don't have a single table of contents in this, which is, I believe, I don't think.
Janelle, are you working from a PDF there?
No, so I was provided this Word document because I requested an editable version so that I could work within it. So I received a Word version from the chairman, and it looks as though I have a total of, I hope we're all referencing the same document, but I am now thinking that I might not, because it looks like what's up on the screen is 125 pages. And what was, let me see, I have 122 pages in my version.
He might have sent you the older copy.
Yes, so the most recent, the current copy in an editable version would be helpful if it's easier for me to just pull the PDF from online. I haven't done track changes in the regulations yet, but eventually it will be really helpful. So at some point, that would be great to get the copy that everyone's referencing. If it's on the website, I'll just, if it's on the website, I understand it's probably a PDF, but if you have an editable version, that'll be really helpful for the future.
Do you have
I have a,
Yeah, it looks like I have appendix A. So there's a lot of inconsistencies. It looks like I have appendix A and then I don't have appendix 2 or 3 referenced in mine. So it looks as though, yes, I have an older version. But granted, I haven't done track changes work in there yet, so no concerns about that yet.
It would really be ideal if we could have an actual, the original Word version of it, if that, do you know?
I don't have that. And if anybody has it, it would be Tom McGowan.
I don't have a word version.
And he, I don't know if he's, whether he's somebody who could get that for us anymore. I think the only way to do it is to do a convert. Unless, the only other question would be, the person who,
Wouldn't the town clerk or
Yeah,
something?
because
come
the
in?
town.
Yeah,
clerk-
the town clerk should certainly have it.
You know, he was the one who sent me this edit. I don't know if he has a word version. That's the only.
Well,
could you
it had to come from somewhere, because you can't. just-
Yeah, no, I know, yeah, no, he's.
with Bob?
Yeah, somebody. Yeah.
I mean, I can always crack at it and convert it. It might get a little wonky in formatting when you take a PDF off of a website, but
Horrible, it's horrible. If we can find the original Word version, we should. do that.
Especially since it was not printed from Word to PDF, it's a scan. It's gonna be especially messy. I've done that before. I've got a couple of converted copies on my laptop already.
You know, because it's crazy when you convert it from PDF right away, they, you know. it's-
Yeah, I mean, it comes up in my practice all the time, because people like send their terms and conditions in PDFs.
Yep.
And then, we want to mark it up and we end up in the same. So I actually have my clients now, as soon as somebody hands them a PDF, they ask for a Word version of it.
Actually,
Yeah.
I think the strategy I would suggest we follow, and if we were to come up with a true regulation that we would put into the zoning book here, would be to add a section under townwide requirements. Because that's where you go to parking and loading, excavation and grading, signs, trailers, alcoholic beverages, public garages and service stations, groundwater protection requirements. I would argue that we could add a section 68, which would be agriculture, or not even agriculture, agriculture. And
Agritourism is a special exception.
yeah, agritourism would be, and then, and much of what's in here would be, at least the beginning of this, would be, basically agriculture is,
Do we lose him?
does anybody hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Well, it's just me on my phone. We've isolated the issue to be the Wi-Fi here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem great.
Okay, so I guess we're even. We cut you off in the middle of speaking and I cut myself off. We cut ourselves off in the middle of me speaking.
You were onto something. Your approach certainly made sense. And then it's actually wherever agriculture is mentioned now in permitted uses, you can just reference see section 68.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, yes. It sounds like there was some feedback, but I can hear you fine.
Then we'd add like section, 15 or 16 and 17 to, oh, we lost again.
No. You keep talking. It's gonna move this.
I gotta join again.
Is your Wi-Fi in town hall okay?
It must be the Wi-Fi in town hall. Yes. It doesn't appear to be okay.
Oh, boy.
We forget to pay the bill.
But anyway, what I was going on is that we'd add our special exception uses to the section 52 and, like have 16 and 17, because I think we just added 15 for the solar panels kind of thing.
Mhm.
Exactly. That's how, and unless you have a better idea?
No, my approach, what I always tend to do is I create much like what you received. So this sort of standalone document with the substance in there before we get into the real, where are we gonna put this into the existing regulations, just so we can think it through comprehensively before, to make sure that the substance is good before we try to figure out how to fit it in. And in this case, I'm glad that I didn't try to fit it in, just provided that I am waiting to make sure that I have the most recent update to the regulations. Was the last amendment May 15th of 2020?
That's correct.
Okay,
That
No,
was the latest one we have. The newest one we did was as of
there was one.
end of March this year.
oh yeah, that first meeting I was at. So
Get back.
even if the town clerk, a workable document would be helpful. PDFs converted aren't ideal. But the town clerk, I'm looking at what's on the website right now. So that has its last update as of May 15th. That was received and stamped by the town clerk.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna reach out to Bob McIntosh. He was chairman at the time, and I know at that time, part of that included changes to the LISD regulations, low impact sustainable development.
Yeah.
Regulations, and as such, to all the stuff that was changed there had to be done electronically. And the question is, where's that electronic copy? And
Yeah,
all you need to do is fold in the last changes, which are pretty minor,
great.
to give you a complete copy. So I'm gonna ask that Tony reach out to Bob to see if he has that, and then have Bob share that with the commission and Tony, and then Tony update that to add the one change that we need, and and then at that point, you would have that copy and you'd be able to work with it too.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't go ahead and try to work within track changes,
Right.
just for that purpose.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I think that before we sort of jump into, looking at, what section numbers, which pieces of this is, I think that we should probably go at least one more round with the one pager. I don't know what other folks, but I'm not necessarily sure we have a consensus on the substance yet.
No, I agree.
I think we need
I
to
just
take
want to
this
have
whole thing, digest it over
Yeah.
a few meetings and mark it up, take it home, mark it up, see what you like, what you don't like. We have a lot of discussion to do.
It's
We
Doug
do.
and Veronica, I agree with you both. I just wanted to have
Overnight thing.
some kind of end game or direction. This is Dave Weed again. Some kind of end game or direction on how we would actually make this all tie together.
Right.
So we make sure that we're thinking about every part of this, and because we really should, the one thing we should, once we get a good copy of the document, do is make proposed markups to the three pages that reference agriculture. And, so we know how that would fold in, knowing that we add special exception, knowing what, now that I feel we have a direction for what we have in front of us here, it'd be good to know what we need to do, the rest of the regulations to fit this in.
Yeah.
Once we break it apart and put it where it's supposed to be. But I'm not saying we should take it out of this format until we're satisfied with what we see here.
Exactly.
Then we figure out how to fit that in. I just think we need to see what we need to do to the agricultural regulations to make those consistent. I feel that should be done now, not wait for how we fold this one in.
Yeah, and also it's a good opportunity while you're looking at that, just that other piece that I believe it was Doug mentioned about how this folds into the special exception procedure, and if there's anything that should be either cleaned up or just clarified there.
Yes, and.
Right.
so I-
Absolutely.
We're waiting for Steve.
In other words, that section 53 is something that if you have any thoughts on, we'd be interested in your ideas.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the missing pieces, I was not given these comments or questions from Steve. So what precisely about section 53?
Well, we'll get those questions to you.
Okay, and then just in the meantime, when we were having those internet issues, just in statutes to reference, it's section 8-2, which is within the land use chapter, which is chapter 124, I do believe, that per state, so our cap provided by the state, if it's a willful violation, so basically if there's a violation, so authorized under the statute, if there's a willful violation, it can, the statute says that you can, the ZEO can fine of no more than $250 per day should the violation continue. And then it's really great to reference 8-12 because it does get into civil penalties, et cetera. Granted, we do know that's a lot. Civil penalties are mentioned under this statute, but that's really what governs the zoning enforcement authority. So those are our bounds. So just thinking that through when we do get to that enforcement piece, that's something that the attorney should reference, that section 8-12 and enforcement.
Does the state have a cap on how much you're allowed to charge, how many days or?
Yeah, so just in reading this, so I have it right in front of me. So basically, if it's willful, and again, this is all going to be up for interpretation by that zoning enforcement officer or the commission. So if the offense is willful, the person convicted shall be fined not less than $100 or more than $250 for each day that such violation continues, or imprisoned not more than 10 days for each day such violation continues, not to exceed a maximum of 30 days for such violation or both, and the Superior Court shall have jurisdictions of all such offenses subject to appeal as in other cases. Any person who has been served with an order to discontinue any such violation fails to comply with such order within 10 days after such service, or having been served with a cease and desist order with respect to a violation, blah, 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 involving this, that, the other thing, shall be subject to a civil penalty not to exceed $2,500 payable to the treasurer of the municipality. So we are governed by that. It does get into criminal law should, again, like these penalties, there are provisions, whereas the zoning enforcement officer can put forth criminal penalties. Again, much to comments earlier this evening, it costs towns a lot of money and it does take a lot of time, but it's important to understand the remedies that are provided to planning and zoning commissions should the regulations be violated. Because those are our limitations.
So basically our hands are tied after $2,500 and they can, if they're making FUCO bucks.
Well, there's,
just keep doing it.
I would always keep in mind, like there's a solution to every problem. I would just keep that in mind. Zoning's a tool. Zoning enforcement's a tool, and it's not going to be the only tool, but granted, we do have to work within the parameters of the powers that the state grants us.
Right. And but it also means that you can take them to Superior Court,
Exactly.
at least throw them in jail for 30 days, if nothing else.
But I mean, if it's something that, I mean, this seems just sort of inherently broken to me because
It's tough.
basically that's 100 grand, it's less than 100 grand a year. Okay.
Yes.
And so if somebody comes up with sort of a scheme in which there's like 100, they can budget $100,000 a year for zoning, you know, to pay their fines.
Well, no, but I mean, I think if somebody is willfully breaking this, you take them to Superior Court and you have, you know, I think even 30 days of jail time, which I think is, you said was the maximum, even though it's 10 days for each violation, up to 10 days for each violation. I thought you said there's a cap of 30 days of court.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, that's in section 8-12.
Has that ever in the history of ever actually happened?
Doug, I can look for who's been in jail for zoning violations.
I don't think it's very common.
No. It's
I'd be surprised if it hasn't though.
It's one of those threats, like you're a 15-year-old, you can steal a car
Yeah.
because you're not gonna go to adult court, you know?
yeah, I mean, but there are numerous cases of various towns taking particular individuals to court over zoning violations. So again, it's a tool. Enforcement is frustrating at times because of the time, but I think the importance lies in having really strong, really clean regulations, whereas you do have authority. And I think there's also the expectation within towns, like most people, hopefully they do the right thing and they do, you know, understand that there is an authority. And oftentimes, if there's a violation that's a zoning regulation violation, there's the potential to find other violations. So be it building violations, the potential to lien a property is also a pretty dire one. The property loses value very quickly if there's a lien on it. So I think keeping that in mind, there are enforcement tools, and I have witnessed towns make hundreds of thousands of dollars on these sorts of things. Again, I wouldn't suggest it as a remedy. It's not a fun process to go through, but certainly just keeping in mind that, yeah, we do have this system that we do have to fit into. Not always the best system is the one that's presented to us, but we don't write the rules, we follow them, I guess. I know that's not always satisfying, but it's helpful to know there are other remedies. And often if there are willful violations, the town is pretty proactive about being able to support the commission and the zoning enforcement officer. Should it be the interest of the town to make sure that those violations don't continue?
But this conversation did jog something deep from my brain. When I first came on the board, there was a foundation, might have been by a person named Murphy, a foundation that was put in place. And I didn't witness the whole start of it, but for a while, towards the end of my time on the beginning of my time on the board, towards the end of this action, well, I guess we must have taken them to court, and then the court ruled that they had to fill the foundation in.
Oh, yeah,
There are.
there are
You do-
remedies.
Bottom line is the remedy is you take them to court, and the court will, and that's like she was saying, Superior Court. And the court will then make decisions as to whether the person is in violation, whether it's willful, and assess whatever remedies that are necessary that a court can assess. So yes, it's basically if somebody violates a regulation, is you take them to court. I know that's not going to happen overnight. That'll take years, but it does happen. It can be done. I can actually attest that now that I recall, I did see it happen around 89, 90. There was it was at least it was just in the zoning enforcement officer's report, or I don't think it was in the minutes, but it was in the zoning enforcement officer's report back when Walter Burkhoff was the zoning enforcement officer.
Yeah. I mean, it is the right to use your property, and there are tools for the town to take that away from individuals.
So it can be done, and we do have the teeth to do that. It just is not an easy process.
Yeah. But
And I mean, gladly, it's not commonplace, day to day in our daily business.
to pop the stack, you're not aware of any sort of fundamental impediment to special permits automatically expiring, as you said, on January 1st. You're not, there was some belief, it was Bob McIntosh actually, who was raising the point that he thought that that was no longer,
That is still my understanding. It was
Yeah.
me who was also raising that.
okay,
And because we originally had a 2-year, the special exception would come for renewal after 2 years. And our land use attorney said that that's not legal, that
great.
they go with the life of the property unless, of course, the land, like we talk about, the landowner doesn't violates the provisions of the special exception.
So just for my context, is Bob McIntosh a land use attorney?
No,
He's on the commission, but he's not here
he
today.
was
Okay,
he was
okay.
chairman at one point. He was chairman for on and off for about 7 or 8 years.
So there's a lovely resource out there. It's called What's Legally Required. It's for Connecticut commissioners. And it's recently been updated by a land use attorney in the state, and it's been a reference for years. And expiration dates are mentioned, and there's a statute that mentions it. I'm happy to do the research just to give everyone the comfort. There are other towns that certainly have expiration dates tacked onto their permits. It's a pretty clean way that's consistent to just say there's an expiration date, come back to renew your permit. I've witnessed many renewal processes in place for home occupations, for various uses on property, especially a special exception, because it's like a special privilege on top of the already allowed uses on that property. So having an expiration date, again, I'm no attorney, but I've talked to many and used their advice. And I actually have a book just right next to me that mentions that expiration date component. So I can grab that just to reference the statute. It's always really helpful in regulations to reference the statute should anyone question that authority.
And that's, but I mean, that was under advice of attorney that I think we made that change, and that was either Mike Ryback or Chip Rohrback.
Was it a land use attorney?
I don't think Chip Rohrback is, I would not consider him like a land use attorney.
Yeah.
Say that's not, I don't think that's his focus, but Rohrback, I mean, I think they take on a lot of different aspects of law. That would be one of them. I don't know if he's a specialist to the level of Steve Byrne.
Yeah. I would always defer to the commission's comfort. So should they wish not to use it as a tool, then without a doubt, that can go away. And then again, vetting everything through the town attorney, just as common practice, should regulations get amended.
We're different in that we actually have a land use attorney rather than the town attorney.
Ideal, great.
So, yeah, just to understand, I think we do want to do it. It's just that we don't know whether it will be legally enforceable.
Yes.
And we don't want to give anyone a special exception thinking that it will in fact expire and then have it turn out that it does not in fact expire. That I think is a
It
better,
doesn't come up for renewal.
Yeah.
or Review. No, I understand. And but that's why we have the question out
Yep.
there, and now that we have Janelle, we'll have a second opinion too.
all right.
Yeah, so I'll verify with my contact, who is a land use attorney, just to run that by him about concerns. And then I have this book with me too. If I can quickly grab that state statute to reference, I can do that. I can also look at other example regulations in the state where there are expiration dates or any sort of renewal periods, because I've definitely come across many.
Yeah, I found several which I sent to the board, which we
Right.
can also send to you.
That's right. No,
Yeah.
I shared
I mean,
those.
not that other towns are always doing everything properly.
Exactly,
but-
Sure.
And But we should definitely get, I don't actually think I have your email, but Dave is going to send you both my sort of I found 3 sort of clear examples of expiring special exceptions from other towns of about the same size as
Right.
Morris. And then we also have the list of like 7 questions for Byrne.
Right.
And we'll share
Yeah.
those with you.
So just speaking from anecdotal experience, I had a attorney on staff, so we had full-time counsel for a town that I worked for in the town of Connecticut, and we had expiration dates for permits. So he witnessed 2 different expiration dates on an annual basis. And again, in-house counsel, I spoke with him every day, every week on my zoning issues. So that wasn't very long ago. So I hope he would have raised it had he have had some concern about the legality.
Right, understand. And actually, in thinking more about both Mike Ryback and Chip Rohrbeck were always town attorneys for the town of Morris, so I think that was their more general practice kind of attorneys, not necessarily specializing in land use, not that they don't do
Yeah,
significant amount, measurable amount of land use to make them, knowledgeable enough to be more than competent to
Yeah.
make decisions.
land use statutes certainly has its quirks.
And they change too over time.
Yeah, often.
That would be a handy tool to have if we can.
Yeah.
What tool, just for clarity?
Having an expiration date on certain special
Yeah.
exceptions.
And just in my understanding, because it's so uniform and because it's so consistent, so it's not based upon a discretionary thing. So it's just, on this date, just come back for renewal. It's a very clear demarcation of the use. So that's where I feel very confidently that it's not based on a judgment call. It's not based on zoning enforcement officer. It's just a clear-cut date that I don't see why it wouldn't comply within the framework of the statutes.
Cool.
Cool.
Anything else?
Expiration.
So I will share the questions with Janelle. Once we get Janelle an up-to-date copy of, an up-to-date editable copy of the regulations, hopefully your tone will be successful with Bob and getting
Bob just texted me back. He said that he should have them to me in the morning.
excellent.
Great. Just send them my way because I'll definitely take a peek
Send 'em to the
where this
board.
makes sense.
I'd also like to send it to you, Dave, so we can add it to the,
So I can add the pieces that we just read. Okay, I agree. I will,
and then we'll send it to Janelle after we add that part.
then I will definitely do that. I'll get that done, by Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay.
Definitely by Thursday morning, she should have something in her hands.
Okay.
I just have, I'm having an all-day project tomorrow, I think, for work. Hopefully it's only half a day, but it could be longer. And as long as the board members respect the fact that Janelle is is clock ticks when we talk to her, that I don't have any issue with having her email. I said I would share it with Doug, so I should share it with everybody.
Just, I don't CC all because of the whole illegal meetings, so I'm pretty cautious about sending out information just on a one-on-one basis because of that whole, when you CC all, we're suddenly having a meeting.
I think most of the board members are pretty well trained here. They know not to respond to. I
Amazing.
generally as long as you send it one way and, to provide information.
Great.
as I've always done that, and I believe that is accepted practice. It's just that you don't respond because then you do create an illegal meeting, because then you're starting a debate.
Yes.
Rather than just, this is
Perfect.
the information we're going to discuss at the meeting, and you put the email on the website with the agenda such that it's, it was just also in a copy was provided to the board separately, kind of thing.
Perfect.
Now, if you put that email up there, you know what was said. So it was as if it was said at the meeting. And then you follow up on that. And that's the way I look at it.
Okay, great. I'm happy to work within that.
But that's, you know, again, as I wish Dylan was here because that way he could hear this part because and that's something I think we need to talk. Is he on the copy list?
On the email list and
And,
the message list.
well, the email list first.
Email, yeah, he is on the email list.
So I think maybe, I don't know, I didn't know if I explained it well enough that the fact that we meet on first Wednesday and the second Monday, and I just think maybe you might want to send him an email and let him know so he knows how to plan his time accordingly. And let him know that we have a public hearing on the solar array coming up on Wednesday too. But anyway, I digress. I think we've got everything covered here. Is that correct, Janelle?
Yeah, I think this is a good starting point. And if anyone has further questions or further topics of research or any other, I will get those questions that we're going to Burns. But if there's anything else that I should look into or just cover, now's a great time to let me know.
Cool. And anything else from Veronica, Kim, Doug, I mean? And Bill, I forgot about Bill. Well, I didn't forget about him because I mentioned him just now. Great. So hearing crickets, then thank you very much, Janelle. I'll let you
Thank
go.
Janelle.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm just looking ahead. I do want to be able to plan accordingly, given
Oh,
the
yes, Please, good.
second is the public hearing. So
Yes,
I'm not available that evening either. I have a standing commitment with another group of folks that I do have to work with. And then it sounds like the next meeting would then be, is that the 21st?
Oh. Following Monday,
June 14th.
Second Monday.
Flag Day.
Yeah, your June calendar doesn't fit with my commitments, sadly.
We could push it to July though.
Yeah.
Is that, I truly wanted to ask
That's not
you-
time critical.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a rush.
No.
Okay. So as long as it's not a rush, then why don't I put on my calendar, it looks like, is that gonna be July 7th?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So send me a lot of homework in the meantime, because I want us to definitely have a product and feel like we're making headway.
Well, I think we defined the homework. I think there's some tweaks we want here. I think we want, once we get you the regulations, you can mark up the agricultural stuff. I don't want to break it out to sections 68 and section 50, the bullet points in section 52 yet. Because
Yeah.
I think we want to do another once more on the document you have in front of us here.
Great. And in the meantime too, provided everyone will get my email, should anyone wish to send comments just on a one-on-one basis, I'd be happy to just gather them. Sometimes it's really helpful to do the research in the meantime, so I can look for precedents. Much to your point earlier, Chairman, our neighboring towns, they honestly haven't moved ahead on the term agritourism. I think some of them are grappling with how to do it. Some neighboring towns have picked up the topic and put it back down. So definitely, to your point, I pulled all the regulations within the Northwest Hills region, and agritourism is again not defined and not really tackled. Agricultural uses, I looked at all those definitions just to get a sense of what activities fall under that, and looked that most were definitely going the special exception route. So the special permit route, where the commission had the additional discretion to approve the use.
And just one comment, any emails you send regarding board business, please copy planningandzoning@townofmorrisct.com.
Yeah, you
I mean,
bet.
if you copy me, but you're not required to copy. In my mind, I wouldn't require you to copy me. you at least have to copy that. So we have a central repository and a central record of everything that gets sent. So if we ever have to provide it via FOI,
Of course.
on a website, it's a lot easier to do because the town has a process to manage that. It's not
Great.
necessarily fun, but still.
Yeah, no, Tony's gotten pretty used to hearing from me on my miscellaneous things.
But that's where everything should be copied
Perfect.
at a minimum.
Great.
Because you said individually, but that's why I'm saying individually plus. townwide.
Perfect. No, ideal. So any other questions or anything else in the meantime until July 7th?
I have nothing.
Okay,
Or anything from anybody else.
okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care,
appreciate it.
guys. We'll see you in July.
It's a good start. I think we're heading in the right direction.
Yep.
Okay. Any comments, send my way.
Sounds good.
You did a
Thanks.
great job. That's my comment.
Good night, guys.
Nice.
See ya.
Okay. We got a good start here and got an item
Get home.
in the next schedule. So next thing would be 5A,
Horses.
enforcement. Any update?
They weren't there today, so that's a good thing.
Okay.
I have pictures if you guys want to see them. You have to go to the office, but they were not there. They haven't been there the last
Fine, we don't-
4 or 5 times I've gone, so.
That's
But I'm gonna keep it on here
Yeah,
and
just.
go another 20 times.
Yeah.
we
This
may,
happened before.
Yeah.
There, he.
let's see it till the end of
And brings it
the, I would
back.
say we see it to the end of the year. at a minimum.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I think
And-
even Steve mentioned something, you have a year to take action, so. We're good for a while.
Yes. 6A, discussion of the housing plan.
Actually, we gotta do 150 Stoddard Road, remember?
57, yes, 5B.
150
150 Stoddard
Road.
Road.
So I figured, I don't know what we can really do. I think someone is squatting there right now, so I don't know how we can do
Oh,
that for
it's
us.
an empty house that somebody's.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it was online at the real.
Well, no, actually,
Says that you
speaking of
buy the
that,
house, you have to basically get rid of the people.
a couple months ago, we had someone call the office and ask about it. But if you want to buy the house, you have to take it with the person in there.
That's-
And the only thing I can think of is maybe it's because of the eviction moratorium,
Oh.
the CDs. I'm thinking, I'm not exactly
Well,
sure.
who owns the
So
property?
I can pull it up right now if you guys want.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or is it like a relative situation that?
I'm really not sure, but I wanted to maybe, the thing I think we should go, maybe ask Steve about
Yeah.
how, this, I don't know, squatter rules, I guess, maybe, I don't know.
I would think it's the
Is
property
squatting really a
owner's
zoning issue?
responsibility to go
The
through.
problem
the
is
eviction
it's
process.
it's a messy property.
I see, okay.
Yeah,
that's what the-
That is our bag,
Yeah,
but
it's a mess.
So we need to see who owns the property and go after them. So they go after the,
Well, right now, actually, the bank, a bank in California owns the property.
wonder if
That's the real gist of the whole issue.
that's the
And-
house, eh?
Exactly, yeah. It looks a lot worse now.
Yeah,
That's actually a nice picture.
that's a good picture.
So basically, they can't get them out either. They're trying, but they can't. So if someone's interested in the property, but to buy the property, you need to buy the person inside the house too.
Unless you condemn the property.
Yeah.
And then they've got to get out.
So the only thing I can think, unless maybe it's a police thing, like Janelle was saying, there's some police powers. That's the only other thing, but
Well, where's so it's, are there any violations other than the
the
junkyard?
only thing is I can think maybe there's the 2 unregistered cars. That's the only vehicles.
Do we have a name of the person who lives there?
No, I don't.
Anything physically wrong with the house?
The only thing, I mean, I don't really know, there's nothing really wrong with the house. No, the only thing is the door was open when I drove by. That's it.
Well,
Or if they're driving the unregistered vehicles.
I think the health inspector did go there sometime, but I don't know. I don't
Because
know.
if there's fire violations or if there's no water, then yeah, that can be enforced.
I mean, also I would say if they have 2 unregistered vehicles on the property,
Mm.
we should contact the landowner, the bank, and see if we can get somebody to listen to us and, you know, if they don't listen to us, start issuing fines and a court citation. And, you know, if nothing else, as long as those two unregistered cars remain there, at least get the permission to go on the property and haul those, you know, and have somebody pay for us to haul those vehicles off.
But aren't we we're putting it against the property owner who at the
Well,
moment,
they're the ones,
bank, but they would have to go take the cars off the property.
unless they don't.
Not their cars.
Unless they're, unless, you know, because if they don't clean it up or can't clean it up, it's like we can't make them evict the person, but we want them to get rid of the vehicles. We could care less about the person living there. I don't want to evict the person, but I want to get rid of the vehicles. Same thing like we did, and, you know, like the junk that's still at, in the dugout on Anderson Road, because there's still, half the junk that used to be there is still there. Once you, it's much more apparent now you pull the dumpster away. But I mean, we made progress there, but it's still a mess.
It's much better.
But
But
the thing is that I'm not looking to get rid of the person living there. I'm looking rid of getting the two vehicles.
Yeah.
That are unregistered, because that's the violation. That's the issue.
Mm.
What's the board's preference? It's up to you guys.
should we maybe ask Steve first before we see
Yeah,
what he
let's
says?
ask him how far our involvement can go.
Well,
I mean,
To see if there's another way to do it, rather than having to try to contact these people in California, whether it's something the police can do, or I don't know, the fire marshal or whatever. That's,
What's the board's preference?
we'll let him miss.
I mean, I don't see any harm, first of all, in trying to, basically sending a letter saying there's a zoning to the owner, saying there's a zoning violation and we're going to start assessing fines.
Where's the owner?
The,
California.
I mean, the mail reaches California just
Oh,
fine.
Takes a long time.
Well, you know, but, you know, the thing is that they're not, you know, it's not clear that, again, sort of, it's the financial consequences are going to be enough to sort of stir the bank to action if they haven't done it.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. It's not.
Yeah.
Or if we could actually-
like it's
At least
a
we could
money-making
try.
Property or.
That's right.
Or if we get enough funds and fines to afford to haul
Yeah.
the cars off ourselves too, you know?
like I said, maybe I contact Steve and try to contact them without a letter, because there's,
See what Steve says.
yeah, maybe, and then
Let's-
we'll reconvene June
Let's make a motion,
second.
please.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to have Tony ask Steve what our options are on 150 Stoddard Road.
I second that, Doug Barnes.
Any discussion?
I'm sorry, Veronica Flurry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Okay, now,
I'm not ready.
that's fine.
Kick it down the road to the
Look.
next one.
You're here, you're participating in that too. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, we have another meeting coming up, so.
You're definitely what we need, and I appreciate it. 6B, discussion on citation ordinance, and then we'll,
I think we already talked about.
I think we already
B and
talked
C.
about B and C pretty much.
so we have nothing new to add to that. That's fine. Just wanted to be sure. 7A,
Would it be better if I read it aloud, or do you guys want to pass it around quickly? And just
we can
review?
pass it around. I just, you know, there's certain things in here probably we shouldn't. I don't know.
This is they're two separate bills, so if you just do it this way, then that way.
But we will announce to everybody what the numbers are and a summary of what they are for. I'll let you do that,
Yeah, I'll do that.
but that way we can just.
Just to get things moving.
No, that's cool. Oh. Bill. Next time, what we should do is you should scan a copy of these and send it just to the commissioners.
Okay, I didn't think about that. It's a good idea. I don't want to.
That way,
I don't want to post them.
that way he could be looking at it too at the same time.
Okay.
I will summarize the first one. It's like an April, the bill for April for the work that Steve did
That's
relative to South Farms. We get the exact number, but it's in $2,600 is basically
Yeah.
changes, basically. I think it read when I saw it. And the other one's probably Island Trail,
Yes,
but I have not seen that one.
there is one for 89 Anderson, but it's only $200.
And that you covered because you can cover that. And we'll see that in our zoning enforcement officer next report next.
Yeah, yeah, I'll add it. I didn't get these till
No, I know.
a few days after, so.
You're right on target.
And the budget year ends end of June, so.
857.50 for the 158 Island Trail. So it's a total of like 50 or 20.
All right, so basically, while Kim's reading that, so basically, okay. So basically, Bill and everyone else, so there's a bill for $857.50 in reference to 158 Island Trail. Basically, the town is getting, I guess, the word is sued,
Yes,
and they're still going through a court process, so. It's been going on for a couple of years now, so.
and they looked like they're not yet ready to settle out of court sort of thing either.
Exactly. So this bill is for 4.9 hours at $175 an hour for a total of $857.50.
And we got the other one there too, so,
Well,
That's
we'll
20.
do separate motions then, right?
okay, then I'd like a motion to pay Steve Byrne
For $857.50 in reference of 158 Island Trail.
the board's agreeable to do that.
I'll make a motion to approve the bill for Steve Byrne for
Pay
800,
the bill.
I'm sorry, to pay the bill for Steve Byrne for $857.50.
Do I have a second?
Veronica Florio.
I'll second it, Douglas Barnes.
Any additional questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried.
All right, then basically the next one is for, in reference to South Farms and questions, and he joined our hearing one of the nights, so the total is 15.1 hours at $175 an hour for a total of $2,642.50.
I'll make a motion to pay the bill from Steve Byrne for $2,642.50.
I second that, Douglas Barnes.
Veronica Florio.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Public input on non-agenda items.
David, just can you go over one thing for the public input is so people know when they can send us letters and when they'll be posted?
Oh, yeah, just one
Just wanna
comment.
Clarify that.
I mean, if you want us to see the stuff before the meeting, we really need to see it before 6, 7 o'clock then before a meeting. All the emails that came in on it came in starting at like
Sunday.
late afternoon on Sunday. I didn't even see them till like 10 o'clock on Sunday night. And I've been working all day, so I didn't have a chance to look at my side. And Tony had to get ready for the meeting here. So he has not had a chance to compile them. So they will be put up. They'll be made available. Nobody's voice will be lost in the shuffle. However, if you want them to be available to the board before the meeting, you need to give us at least, the day before the meeting. A
24 hours. Basically, if the
It's a
meeting,
business day, right?
no,
Yeah.
basically, if the meeting's on Wednesday,
it's a business day.
if the meeting's on Wednesday before, basically Tuesday before 10 AM technically, because
Yeah.
that's when I'm working. And then if a meeting's on Monday, the Friday in the morning, 10 AM.
Right. But this will eventually go to the public hearing. We're not really gonna have a major meeting on it until July 7th at this point in time. You know, this is not something that's gonna happen overnight. We want to do this right because it's something that's going to be town-wide. And once we go to a public hearing, that's when we have a time limit on our process, and that's where it has to go if we proceed with it, and once it gets, once we develop it, and if we decide we want to proceed with it, sort of thing.
I have two hands up. I don't know.
Yes.
Tom, can we post it on your part of the website on the town? In case people forget when they should admit, just have a little thing like under your contact information, if you.
Yeah, I mean, I could see if I
That would
could.
be a good idea, yeah.
Yeah, put
so
submissions for
it's-
meetings on Wednesdays must be by Tuesday at whatever, and then submissions for meetings on Monday must.
Was
be
Lori
by
first?
Friday, whatever.
Doesn't really, I don't think, I didn't see. Let's just go with Erica because she's unmuted right there.
Okay, they're both in.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Dave, I just had a question. I just noticed on your agendas that it's public comment on non-agenda items only. And I don't know when that happened, when years ago when I was on the board with you, it was public comment. For special meeting, it needs to be on agenda items, not non-agenda items. It just seems a little off to me. I feel like people come to the meetings because they want to comment on the agenda items. You're the only board that does that. So I just didn't know what the reasoning behind it.
Oh, really? I forget why it was, but at one point, because I thought was non-agenda items way back before you were even on the board.
No, it was always just public comment. And then it was for special meetings, it's public comment on agenda items as per, FOI.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, so I don't know like when that changed on your agenda item, like your agenda makeup, but I feel like it's kind of, I don't know, it's a little off.
Well, let's look into it.
Okay, that was my only comment. I just feel like a lot of people
I
are,
hear you. I have no issue with that. I think we should be open and,
yeah, people are coming to
I
meetings
have
because
no
they want to
issue-
talk and they should
I
be
have
able to
no
talk
issue with
on
that.
what's being discussed. So
no,
that was it.
That's,
thank you, Erica. I appreciate that.
All right.
Well, Tony, I mean, I seriously, would you take a look into that?
yeah, look, I mean, ever since I joined, I was originally on the board in 2018 when I joined, it was
Yeah.
always on there and then I just continued it since.
I mean, I guess I would also ask Steve if
Okay.
there's a reason why it's that way.
Okay, sure.
Maybe it's just a typo.
It's possible. It could have been a typo from long ago that carried on.
Cutting the ham to fit your great.
10 years.
I don't, I'm not, because I think that was, you were on the board when we added that initially.
I don't remember that.
You know, that it was a little bit after that, because I thought it was still chairman when we did that, but I could be wrong.
I think Lori wants.
Don't remember. That was a long.
Yes, Lori will definitely,
Did you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, go.
no, I just,
Did you put that on there because you wanted the public to only give input at a public hearing? On agenda items?
I don't think that's, I have to find out why that's there, and if anything, it would have been Steve Byrne who would have given us that advice. That's my feeling on the matter.
Dave, just sorry to interject, rather than sending that to Steve and incur legal fees, you can also call Tom Hennick
Okay.
at FOI. That's
No,
free.
That's fine.
No, it's a good,
Yeah.
I'll email Tom.
Contact Tom Hennick.
He's pretty good with.
Thank you, Erica. That's cool.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Erica.
Who is that?
Erica Dorset.
No,
Tom Hennick?
Head of FOIA.
Ah,
Okay, so.
That's what it's all about. Lori, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So my question is going back to when you can receive and process statements, concerns via email about a current or upcoming meeting. For example, I want to know that your guidelines or your procedures will be followed for everyone, including the applicants. Is that correct?
That would be the plan, yes, is to, well, our whole objective with any kind of, when we have a subject matter like this, that would be, I mean, for the agritourism, I don't consider there to be an applicant. Yes, we did have a member of the public who provided us that idea and provided us a sample regulation. However, it's something that I think is an idea that's in the back of many people's heads that the board has decided they want to take on. And, so that I don't consider that an applicant, that's the board's idea. And however, if the person who crafted the original regulation that got it on the agenda were to make a comment, I would give them the same requirements for inclusion. The only difference comes with an application that comes in on short notice, because there once was a time where we required like a 3 to 5 day notice, something like that, somewhere in that, like a 3 working day notice before we would entertain an application that was received. But the one risk you run with that is that if you have like a subdivision or re-subdivision application, that if you don't act on it in a timely manner, that you run the risk of having that take effect without, if you don't take action on the subdivision application, the subdivision application becomes law and is approved by your not taking action in a certain set period of time. So it's always considered safer to receive these, or if they were out, incomplete to the extent that it was unrecoverable to process them, that they would be rejected without prejudice and done right at the start rather than let it sit for a week or a month. And, put the board at risk if you can't get the public hearing open in time to hear the subdivision application or re-subdivision application. So
Okay,
that's the only
that would-
difference.
That would be one exception. That would be one exception.
Yes.
And I can hear that. But I think it's important moving forward, a couple of things, is that a certain particular level of fairness be created. And I think that is in process. And I just want to acknowledge that this procedure will basically be held for a majority of the community, except for something like an application like that,
Yes,
correct?
that is the intent, yes.
Okay. And then my second question is, please, I would like to know if there is any, if anyone will be responding to any questions that are being sent to the commission. If there's a question being sent, will someone be responding to the question in a?
I will try to do, and I can't promise to be able to, what we'd have to do on that, we'll try to.
So
I
why
can't promise we'll
can't
get
a question
everybody.
be answered?
What's that?
Why can't the question be answered?
It's not
Where,
that,
where does one get an answer? Let me ask you that, if it can't be via email.
well, let me finish what I was trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that, I'm not going to promise that I'm going to be able to effectively read everything, and I might miss a question, or Tony might miss a question when he reads it. However, our intent would be to take the information and answer anything that's a question at the forthcoming meeting when the
Okay.
agenda item's up. I don't want to do it directly via email too much. I have been in the past, but I think the right thing to do is to, rather than add more emails to the chain, is that just provide a response at the meeting. Catalog. I tried to do that with some of the questions, with the main questions I had towards the end of the PDD application. I didn't name the names. I think I will name the names in the future but to me, some of the questions came from same questions came from a number of people. So it was like, it was just a couple of them were like really general questions, because like the whole thing, there were a couple things that came for 2 to 3 people kind of thing. And but yes, the intention will be to answer these questions. We did that with Joel Skilton provided a whole list of questions when we were considering the solar array stuff, and that was answered at the public hearing. That will be the intent and the policy of this commission while I'm chairman.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night. Appreciate everybody's efforts.
Thank you, Laurie.
Good night, Lori.
Good night, Lori.
Anybody else? Okay, that means section 8 is over with. We will look into why it's non-agenda items and figure out what the best practice.
I have a suggestion of why it might be on there, because if you put, you could comment on agenda items, we'd be here till midnight.
Well, that might be, but the other side of the coin is that.
I mean, it could be,
somebody-
sorry. It could- Sorry, it could be something where sometimes someone has a complaint about something maybe, and it's not on the agenda. They like to bring it up at the meeting, maybe. I don't know, maybe that's the
Well, that could be
intent,
part-
maybe.
I think, my thinking on why it is there now, the more I think about it, is because, let's say, Noel Lafayette was here for 3A, the solar array. Now he's gone, his representative is gone, whether it's an attorney, an engineer, or whatever. Then all of a sudden, on number 8A, somebody starts asking questions.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. And they're not there to hear it and respond to it. And
That could be why.
I think if it's already on the agenda,
This was the explanation that you originally gave when I started joining the board, by the way.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's my
It made
understanding
a
of why
degree
we
of
did
sense.
that. Now I think
It does
about it.
make a degree of sense, yes.
Erica Dorset is raising her hand.
Yes, go ahead, Erica.
Just to that point, Dave, I mean, if that's the reasoning, that's effectively having no comment or no public comment at your meetings,
Well,
which, you know, I sort of feel like as a town, we want to get away from, so.
no, I get you. I mean, then the remedy to that is to allow comment when the item is on the agenda.
Yeah.
And if the board's comfortable with that, I have no issue with doing that.
Or
And I-
just
I would-
allow
I-
comment, you know, whether it's on the agenda or not. If it's a regular scheduled meeting,
Right.
public comment should be allowed.
Yes, unless it's a
I
special,
want to see what Steve says too, though.
unless it's a special meeting, I would, you know, I welcome non-agenda, agenda and non-agenda items. Because, you know, it's a regularly noticed meeting, so it's like there's some freedom one has because everybody knows the meeting's coming. If they want to know what's going on, they know to be here. If it's a
Right,
special,
or-
they don't. But anyway, but yes, we will follow up on that, but I believe that's the reasoning behind that. But I'm not saying that's right. I'm just explaining my.
Yeah, I
recollection.
just,
Right.
you know, whether it's on the agenda or somebody has something new to bring up or somebody's sitting at a meeting until 9/11 at night because they want to talk about something that was mentioned in the agenda, they should have the right to do so, so.
Okay.
It's fair. Joel?
Have Joel.
So I have a question for you, Danny.
Yes.
If someone sends in a question or if they ask a question in a public meeting, would they expect an answer that day?
Oh, and via email
Or
response?
just if we had a question here?
It's possible you may not get an answer because what if we don't know the answer to the question?
Sure. No, I get that. No, I understand.
Or it's something that we might have an idea what the answer is. It's not something we want to answer until we've had proper research to make sure we got all the i's dotted and t's crossed to answer it.
So if you get an email that has a question, would you answer it at a meeting like this and say, Joel Stilton had a question on an agenda item or a non-agenda item?
What I would do is, let's say I had a list of questions that I had a chance to review and had marked up or noted on a copy I printed out for the agritourism amendment that we were discussing tonight. And I believe I did that with you when we had that public hearing. You had a list of questions.
Yeah.
I would try to answer those questions right then and there at the start of that item before I turned it over to Janelle. Since I didn't have a chance to really look at any of the messages, I simply, went through and said, I didn't have a chance to look at them. I tried to make that statement up front so you knew and understood why, what the situation was and what the expectation is.
But where I was going is it would be reasonable if someone asked a question that they would get an answer.
Yes, I'm not saying that, I'm saying it's very reasonable.
Yeah, I get that. But Erica, would that be okay if I had a question at a Board of Selectmen's meeting that I would get an answer? I don't think I'm gonna get an answer.
Actually, excuse me, that question is out of order.
That would be appropriate. I'm sorry, Dave, thank you. But I got the answer that I would have gotten.
I understand what you're trying to say, and that doesn't, well, maybe things are changing,
I doubt it highly, but thank you for answering my question.
but I'm all in favor of what Erica's saying personally. I have been that's why I always keep this thing on whenever I can, but I will look in and decide what the right thing is to do on it.
Just for the record, I said public comment, not question and answer, so.
Right.
I was clear. I asked Dave a question and he answered.
Anybody else? Tick tock, tick tock.
Okay, Veronica, it's your turn.
I would like,
I'm-
Veronica Florio, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the May 10th meeting of the Morris Planning and Zoning Commission at approximately 9:14 PM, May 10th, 2021.
This is Douglas Barnes, and I'm seconding that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. Public and board